Chapter 1. Our meeting.
I never asked for a man to marry, nor to be the woman you adore. All I want is to be seen, as a person with all my beauty and all of my flaws.
He had already planned it. He always planned his actions. Even so, he was not someone who wouldn't grab an opportunity when it presented itself. Since he was a man of many ideas, opportunities often presented themselves. What made him the most successful was that he would listen and learn. Sometimes he didn't even know how he did it. He didn't have the time to understand all of his thoughts fully. He had a feeling based on all the information he processed, which was accurate most of the time. He thought to himself with a smirk, this ability was what had made me rich. When he wanted to do something, he always found a way to make it happen. Ever since he was young, he knew that knowledge brings power, although it could also cause pain when presented to others if they didn't like it. He observed her from across the room. She had not yet noticed him. In his peripheral vision, he saw co-workers moving about, heard their laughter and the clinking of porcelain mugs. Why are we so obsessed when in love, he wondered, unable to contain his smile. He couldn't get enough of her. The familiarity of this intense emotion reminded him of past experiences with other girls during his youth and with his former wife. He knew that the obsessive feeling towards her would eventually fade away, but he decided to let himself enjoy it while it lasted. This time, he couldn't shake the feeling that it could be different. She was different, or so his dopamine-filled brain thought. There was a connection with her that he wasn't sure he had felt before. He never really longed to have sex with just any girl, even though he had tried that too. For him to feel truly attracted, there had to be something special that caught his attention. A connection. Their co-workers often found her peculiar as they spent time together. She laughed at his jokes that only a few of his friends could appreciate, making him feel close to her. When she added her own wit to his humor, he couldn't help but laugh, thinking to himself, she gets me. He felt as though, maybe, he could love her, not that he truly believed it. He had a hard time expressing his love for others. He thought he may have even forgotten how love felt if he had ever known. Whatever love meant, it was not the same for him as it seemed for those he believed he loved. He considered that the love he had for his kids might have to be enough for him. He would always try to give them all that he believed was good for them, to show his appreciation for having them in his life. His experience had taught him that relationships were never that simple. The lunchroom emptied, leaving only her. He approached her and asked if she would like to join him for dinner that evening. Her smile was so radiant it seemed like she could hear his mind shouting yes with her response. He already knew she would say yes. His intuition told him so. She excused herself, explaining that she was in a hurry. Just before leaving, she turned her head to take a last glimpse of him. Her eyes glistened with curiosity and excitement. He couldn't bear the feeling of wanting to feel her skin, thinking of her naked body in his bed. Then he would try something new he had thought about doing. He was a man who made his dreams come true, and so would his plans with her. He knew it. Later that day, he dressed himself up for their dinner. Looking like a gentleman, he snorted sarcastically to himself. Dressing up made him feel like he was acting. The clothes had a particular uplifting scent that filled him with excitement. His brain connected the smell to the thrilling events that usually followed. When he was younger, he didn't care much about his clothing. The more he spent time with people who made settling decisions, he understood the meaning of dressing fancy. He smiled when he thought about how he mockingly called them the decision makers. Dressing up made him seem more empowered and comfortable when making difficult decisions. He learned the social codes of what to wear, whom to date, and whom to love. He always hated that game. He hated to judge others by their first look, even though he knew it often said much about people. Some people concealed their wisdom, and they intrigued him. Everyone around him took him and his work too seriously. People couldn't comprehend how he did it. The truth was he didn't take anything too seriously. He did it because he wanted to, and he apparently looked powerful while doing so. However, tonight was all about having fun and sweeping her away. As he made the last adjustments to his hair, he gazed at himself in the mirror, having no doubt in his mind. She arrived just in time for dinner, or maybe a few minutes late. Even though it was important for her to be on time, she found it difficult these days. As she entered the room, she saw him sitting at the table. Fumbling with her bag, she accidentally knocked over the chair she tried to hang it on. Just an hour before, she had been calm and confident, but the stress of leaving her protesting kids with their dad had made her feel jittery and flustered. It used to be so much easier to be punctual before she had kids. The image of the smoothly sophisticated lady she used to imagine herself to be seemed like a distant memory. He got up to help her get settled in her chair, and she could sense from his humble look and smile how much he enjoyed seeing her. He was always happy to help. She excused herself. "I'm glad I have my kids to blame, otherwise I wouldn't have any good excuses." "You often kid about things that you actually reckon to be the truth," he said, as she felt his eyes absorbing her when studying her reaction intently. His comment made her thoughts wander for a moment. It was true. Some people had hinted at that before, but never in the way he did. When he said it, she could feel the depth of his observation, as if he saw her in a way that no one else had for a long time. It was an unsettling feeling. Most of the time, she felt as if she was playing a role, trying to be like everyone else. But a part of her longed to be herself, to be free to speak her mind. She didn't know how others kept their mouths shut. Couldn't they see what she saw? She envied those who always spoke their minds. She often did too, but too often it led to misunderstandings. She hated being misunderstood. He was one of those people who often spoke his mind. Their conversation turned to this topic as the waiter discreetly presented the menu. Caught up in their conversation, they continued to talk. "It's exhausting that they can accuse me of being rude and impolite while thinking that I can't tell them the truth about their behavior when they make mistakes or fail to see the whole picture," he said, tossing his head and rolling his eyes. "Well, yeah, if you want them as friends," she replied with a touch of sarcasm. "I never want them as friends." His eyes were daring. "And here we are," she said, looking at him. They both smiled, as if they understood each other. It wasn't that they didn't like other people. It was just that they found it exhausting that society never seemed to get it. Knowingly, this was how others sometimes felt about them. They didn't get it. Even if he knew that some people might consider him odd or emotionally distant, he did care deeply for those who were treated unfairly by society's rules. He was passionate about helping those who wished no harm and were trying to contribute, yet still ended up mistreated and misunderstood by ordinary people. For him, it was necessary to point out mistreatment when he saw it. Others would sometimes consider him arrogant for doing so. He would get provoked by their way of repeating their behavior according to what everyone else thought. At times, he tried to hold his thoughts to himself and adjust to their way of thinking, but it was hard dealing with the feeling of being false. "I guess that I am a bit too rational for their taste. I just hate when I feel forced to pretend not to see better solutions," he said, his voice animated. "It always takes such time to cooperate with others when I have to explain my ideas. I guess I'm more cut out for the leading role, to explain in a way they sort of understand and then lead, or maybe just to be on my own." She noticed that this was something that had been bothering him. It connected her to a feeling of isolation, a feeling she would experience in the middle of a group of people, especially when holding back. She gave him a playful reply. "Oh, admit it. You just love making people uncomfortable. So do I. The way I see it is that I wish to awaken the feeling of them questioning themselves, not to make them feel stupid, more a way to make them snap out of their narrow way of thinking." She never said it like that to anyone before. She didn't quite know why she now did. Looking at him, she felt by his amusement that he understood her intention. What others considered provocative behavior was something that felt right, likely because of her way of being provoked by their way of thinking inside the box. Their conversation progressed in a rapid phase, in contrast to their slow pace of eating the food they had ordered. They seemed unaffected that the steam kept rising from the dish, which would usually decrease its heat and flavor. He made an honest joke about his past relationships. He now didn't know who to find someone to keep by his side for the rest of his life. You can never keep anyone by your side, she pointed out. You want them to stay with you because you love them, right? Then you can never persuade them to stay or ask them never to leave you. Love cannot be forced. You cannot force someone's genuine interest. You can only give them as much love as you can and be grateful for the time you have together. As she finished speaking, her eyes wandered to the window next to them, lost in thought. Should I just give up on finding someone to stay with me? He asked, not entirely serious. But as he said it aloud, he realized he actually meant it. No, but never let the fear of them leaving you to control how you treat them. Be aware of it, she replied, still looking away. So young, and you still had time to think about this? He tried to lighten the mood, but she remained silent. It stresses me out when people leave me. I guess sometimes it causes me to push them away, he admitted. It was hard for me to understand love because it's not something you can learn and understand by yourself. Love is supposed to be something you feel with others, the essence of our goodness seen through each other's eyes. I've lost someone I shared my life with for a long time. It's impossible to love someone without spending time with them. Without shared memories, it becomes more of an adoration. Love is the memory and composure in our bodies in the presence of someone based on the memories we have with them. Without these shared memories, it becomes only an admiration, a crush. Even though I did what I could to save my friend, I wish I had been more grateful during the time we shared. We can't share any more moments now, and the memories are starting to fade away. I can't relive our love for each other, and a part of my life, our life together, is fading away, she explained, and he felt her sorrow and grief through the look in her eyes. Her words had him thinking about his own loss. Over the years, he had endured many painful events, but nothing hurt him as deeply as his tremendous deprivation. The loss of his baby girl who was supposed to be his first genuine love, someone who would have his infinite adoration, his firstborn child, who would be a part of how he knew he wanted a family to be like, a family unlike anything the one in which he grew up. It was now a long time ago. Time has its way of healing the devastation after a loss, but the thought of losing his baby still lingered in his mind. Thinking about losing his baby made him now remember his inquisitiveness when learning astrophysics while growing up. It helped him to suffer through all the horror he saw as a kid, by understanding where we come from and exploring the boundaries of his imagination. Through books and movies, he found hope for a better future, hope that things didn't have to stay the way they were. In his mind, he would imagine a place of peace where he felt calm, a place of harmony. He often found himself thinking about space when visiting this place of emotional alleviation. It made him feel closer to those whom he had lost. Imagining their existence as a part of this universe made him feel as if they could still be close, even though the particles that once created their bodies were now rearranged. Or as if he could exceed his existence and travel to a parallel universe in which he'd never lost them. Both of them had been quiet for a while. The waiter removed their plates, trying to catch their attention, but soon moved on when feeling the intense aura surrounding them. Later, when presented with the checkbook, they seemed to snap back from their minds. Without a further plan, they paid and collected their belongings, leaving the restaurant together. "You have an exceptional mind. Why don't you join me for a walk and take care of that beautiful brain of yours?" she teased, giving him a tempting look. "I'd love to learn more about your ideas. They intrigue me." For long they had been seated, caught by their conversation. She seemed to enjoy leaving the indoors and walking out into the pouring rain. He looked at her, not wanting to get himself all wet. The rain was falling heavily, turning the street into a stream. She looked at him with a smile that dared him to follow her, and he couldn't resist her temptation. Never. As they began to walk, he asked, "How is it that I feel as though you know me?" Her feet were skipping, almost as if she was caught in a dance. She answered him with a smile. He was captivated by the way she looked at him with eyes that seemed so familiar, even though they had only known each other for a short time. The way she spoke about her feelings was similar to the way he felt. When he tried talking about his feelings with others, they would often misinterpret them or tell him that he was wrong. Even though he had difficulty genuinely connecting with anyone, he realized that there would be others who felt like him. Over the years, he thought himself to have a connection with some of those he had met, but in the end, he often felt as though everyone betrayed him, as if the things they talked about didn't mean the same to them as they did to him. He often felt as though they left him. He knew he had an issue dealing with people going. It was hard to realize that their good time together would not come again the same way it previously had. Whenever given a chance in any relationship, he always tried his best to make it work. Yet he always ended up with the same feeling. At times he found himself struggling with feeling lonely, abandoned. He felt esteem towards how she never judged him, but her eyes also said so much more. They seemed to say that she shared his pain and knew what he had been through. Could that possibly be true? Was it all in his head? Was it just the thrill of their whole experience that got to him? Their clothes were now much heavier than before, as some raindrops continued to fall on them. Their clothes were dripping as they walked through the city, prompting him to reminisce about the times he had played with his kids in the rain. Parenting had always been a challenge for him, as he had to maintain his patience while accepting his children's inability to control their tantrums and acknowledging his own limitations to prevent his own outbursts. However, he had learned to identify his emotions and communicate them to his children so that they could feel safe and do the same. He cherished spending time with his kids and friends who had accepted him for who he was, even if they did not always understand him. We will always make mistakes as parents, won't we? Our children will grow up and hopefully learn from our mistakes. If we're lucky, they will understand in time. Otherwise, they may blame us and hold us responsible. But nobody is without mistakes, right? If we didn't fail, we wouldn't know how to succeed. That's just how humans work, he said. He noticed her eyes were focused on the ground as they continued walking. She smiled and nodded, lost in thought. Spending time with her kids was one of the things she loved the most. As they spent their time learning, she also learned so much. Spending time with her children was one of her favorite things to do, and she learned so much from them. They had her explain the world in a simplicity they could understand, which sometimes required her to reformulate her own understanding. To observe herself and understand her behavior in order to explain it to them, to connect what is hard to understand with what is easy to understand, how it is all connected. She had always felt that there lay a certain beauty about expressing what seemed to be hard to understand in simple terms. His words had an impact on her. As a parent, she had to accept constant failure because there isn't enough time or energy to make the best decision in every situation. Sometimes you just have to wing it. Sometimes you end up crying when you're supposed to be the one comforting. When she felt as if she couldn't pull through, crying and feeling helpless, she couldn't be prouder than when her kids came and hugged her. All that she hoped for was that they felt the same way when she comforted them. She replied with a humble voice, "Yeah, I agree. The hard part isn't being a parent per se, it's being a good parent while also trying to be the person you want to be with them. It's juggling all the different commitments, responsibilities, and expectations in life." They continued to share their experiences on the matter. Darkness had now surrounded them as their walk seemed to have taken them away from the city lights. Above them, the night sky had cleared. Faraway worlds in the form of starlight now unfolded their existence. Down on earth, they kept walking, caught in each other's thoughts. As their conversation progressed, it became evident that they shared a fundamental understanding of how to care for others, including as parents. Both had experienced divorce. For him, it was a brief but intense process once he expressed his feelings. For her, it was an enduring internal struggle. As she spoke with a strained and serious voice, "I know it was difficult for my husband, but what else could I have done? My husband was a man consumed by hate and anger, which are powerful emotions when allowed to take hold. During our conversations, my husband showed no interest to let go of all the hatred. My husband believed it was right to show me hatred, unable to process the emotions following our breakup by discussing them with me. Instead, my husband saw me as cruel and continued to do so despite my feelings, all because my husband couldn't accept my right to my emotions and my need to be loved and appreciated. My husband could never truly see my beauty and strength or comfort me when I made mistakes. It was evident to me that my husband never even knew me. It made it difficult for me to trust someone again, afraid that it would end up like that again with threats and spiteful words. She felt her sorrow creeping back as she spoke, even though she thought she had dealt with it. I asked my husband to treat me as a person, not as a woman to keep. It was not possible because of who my husband was, the way my husband perceived me. Some tried to push me towards hate and convince me that we had nothing to do with each other. But in my heart, I couldn't bring myself to hate my husband, no matter how much hate was expressed towards me. What would be the point of hating? We shared so much, and no matter how I felt, I was still me, the same person who cared for my husband. Together, we had been through so much. He was still the one who had been by my side all these years. We still shared good memories, but never spoke the same language. That was what hurt me the most, accepting that we never had a real understanding of each other. I had been living in my own lie. Yeah, we never really know what's on someone else's mind, he replied sympathetically, recognizing his own feelings in hers. For him, it wasn't until everything fell apart in their life that he fully understood that they had never really understood each other. His wife didn't seem to care to understand what he felt when he tried to explain it, or maybe she just couldn't understand. He had a hard time accepting that his wife wouldn't listen to him. It all felt like a battle. When it was all over, all assets had been shared. No one had won anything. Everyone involved had lost, all because they couldn't understand each other. He never expected them to end up like that, how it was impossible to resolve all that had become broken between them. He suddenly realized how far they had gone. The fresh and cold smell brought him back. Without mentioning anything, he took the lead and guided them back to the city. She didn't reflect on his change in course, caught up in memories of the past. She told him about how she tried to survive the sorrow when she left her marriage and abandoned almost all material possessions. I had to choose what was important to survive. All those objects were just part of a facade. Some of them might have been necessary or inspiring, but the rest only kept me distracted from being myself. The more I got, the more I bought, and the more I had to take care of. I hired people to help me, but then I had to manage them. I had to make sure everything was running smoothly, or at least not decaying. My focus was always somewhere else, which prevented me from being free to dream about what I wanted. It kept me from being present when spending time with my kids. There is no time but the present for them. There were so many things I had to take care of, and at the end of the day, my brain was still processing everything that was going on. I was never really there. As she spoke, she remembered how liberating it felt when she finally left everything insignificant behind, leaving all those who were insignificant. Her now freezing body reminded her of the present, and she realized that walking this far in the rain was probably not the best decision. However, neither of them cared much for such formalities. Once caught in someone's mind, you are supposed to enjoy the exploration while it happens, or you will forever lose the opportunity. As he processed her words in his head, they gave him new perspectives and shed light on some of his musings. "I haven't thought about it like that, but you're right," he said. "In essence, there are two things. Abstractions. We need to live our lives and achieve our goals. One is money, which allows us to use the resources we need. More money means greater, more advanced projects and an easier way to achieve them. With less money, you can still make it happen. But you might have to work harder to make your ideas more efficient. You might also have to spend more time explaining yourself to investors or others you need to achieve your goal. This leads to the second one, which is time. Time is always a factor. How much time do you have to make it happen? How much do you need to change your time working for others to get the money to make it happen? How much time do you have to gather the information you need? I enjoy my money, but it's no fun without any time to do what I want, as you said. Luckily, I want to work with what I do, so I get both. He knew that sometimes he was considered smug for saying this, and many people would give him condescending looks when he told them. For him, it was the truth, and he lived by those rules. Even as a boy, I was puzzled by time. Back then, I lacked the knowledge that I would not be able to learn and do all I wanted. I had to decide what mattered. When I was young and didn't understand this, I would go into many projects. It gave me experience, but now I only focus on what matters to me. The things I do, whether it's work or other projects, I do because I want to. I think people who tell you that you can't do what you feel do so because they don't always have good intentions. They won't accept responsibility for hurting others. Funny enough, there is money in making the future better, investing in the changes that have to come, no matter how we feel about them. Money is not bad, negative attitudes are. I have no wish to hurt anyone, and if I do, I will try to explain and listen to make it better. Even so, I will not lie about how I feel. Of course, he didn't always tell people this. Some already thought he was arrogant and would not comprehend what he meant. He could easily picture where he allocated his resources in his head. Sometimes his predictions could be off, but he made up for the losses each time he succeeded. Even so, these days there was a feeling that kept haunting him. He tried to bury it, but it kept coming back. His feeling of time running out, his inability to buy himself the time he wanted. Even if there was a statistical probability that he would live many years to come, he could never know how many. For each day there was one less to come, and the next passed by faster than the previous one. Before them, the city lights appeared once again. She spotted a cab and signaled for it to stop. He opened the door for her, and she gave him a shrewd look. "It's true what you said, but isn't it also possible that since you have the knowledge to make money, imagine if you didn't have the money, everyone would think you're just a madman doing whatever you feel like, wouldn't they?" She smirked, already knowing the answer.